bracing for a confirmation fight, no doubt about it, that will come afterwards with a very slim Republican majority in the Senate. Joining me now, John Malcolm. He is the vice president of the Institute for Constitutional Government at the Heritage Foundation and a former deputy assistant attorney general. He also compiled the list of Supreme Court justice recommendations in 2016. 7 of the 8 that you compiled ended up getting onto that list. Not a bad ratio.
Yeah, no, not bad at all.
One of them was Brett Kavanaugh, so let's start there. He is 53 years old, Yale Law graduate, D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals, so he's a local there, kind of on the farm team for the Supreme Court. But there are also concerns from some that he is not conservative enough and that he has ties to the W-43 Bush administration. We know what the president thinks about the Bushes in some cases. Are the critiques that he's not conservative enough accurate?
Well, I don't think so. I think the world of Brett Kavanaugh, in addition to going to Yale, he clerked for Anthony Kennedy on the Supreme Court. He then worked for under Ken Starr at the Office of the Inspector General. For 5 years, he was a senior advisor to President Bush, and he's written over 300 opinions in his 12 years on the D.C. Circuit. He is highly regarded by judges across the country. He's a committed textualist and an originalist, cares a lot about separation of powers, is not in favor of giving undue deference to agencies. There have been a couple of opinions in which he actually ruled the way conservatives would want him to rule in terms of reaching the right outcome, but he didn't give the most pure conservative reasons for reaching that outcome, and that's caused some criticism. But you know, he sits on a court with a majority of Democrats, and he has to appeal to the Supreme Court too.
Raymond Kethledge, 51 years old, out of the Sixth Circuit. He is a University of Michigan law grad, so not necessarily in the mold of the Ivy League, of which the other 8 justices are. There was a story in the New York Times this morning that Mitch McConnell has pointed to Kethledge as one of 2 that could possibly have the easiest nomination path. Do you see it that way?
Well, he hasn't attracted the kind of criticism from a few conservatives that Brett Kavanaugh has, and he certainly has a long judicial track record. He's been on the Sixth Circuit, I think, for 10 years now, possibly a little bit longer. Also clerked for Justice Kennedy. University of Michigan is a fine law school. He also wrote a book recently about leadership that I think was well done and attracted a lot of attention. He'd also do a fine job as an associate justice.
Amy Coney Barrett, 46 years old, 7th Circuit. She's only been on the Federal Court of Appeals since November, I believe, right? So you're talking only 7-8 months. There's some questions about whether or not her resume is long enough, a Notre Dame law graduate. Is the resume there?
Well, she hasn't been a judge for very long, but she's been a very distinguished academic for a long time. She was at GW and then University of Virginia, and since 2002, she was at Notre Dame. She has compiled an impressive body of scholarship, was supported by scholars across the political aisle around the country during her confirmation hearing, and of course, held up as Grace under fire during her confirmation hearing.
And then there's also Thomas Hardiman. We are led to believe that he finished 2nd last go-around to Neil Gorsuch, so help me out with this. If you finished 2nd last time, there's an opening this time. Why wouldn't Hardiman be the pick if you're the president?
Well, the calculus changes with each pick, and it's a whole new ball game. Tom Hardiman has actually been a judge the longest. He was a district court judge in 2003, and he sat on the 3rd Circuit since 2006. A very distinguished judge, close, of course, to the president's sister, has written some very solid opinions on religious liberty, the Second Amendment. So it doesn't surprise me that he's in that final list. Whether he'll get the nod or not remains to be seen.
Democrats are rallying around Roe versus Wade. There will be, if this nominee, whoever it is, goes through, a 5th nominee that was put on the high court by a Republican president. I want you to take a listen here real quick to what then candidate Trump said on the trail during one of the debates. Watch.
Do you want to see the court overturn? You just said you want to see the court protect the Second Amendment. Do you want to see the court overturn Roe v. Wade?
Well, if we put another 2 or perhaps 3 justices on, that's really what's going to be, that will happen. And that'll happen automatically, in my opinion, because I am putting pro-life justices on the court. I will say this, it will go back to the states, and the states will then make a determination.
If it is one of those 3, what happens to Roe, do you think?
Well, I think that the concerns about Roe versus Wade being overturned anytime in the near future are sort of overblown. There's only one justice on the court, Clarence Thomas, who has called to revisit Roe. The justices move very slowly and incrementally with respect to any kind of precedent. And of course, with John Roberts on the court, you never know exactly which way he would go if Roe was squarely presented to the Supreme Court. And he's also, the president has also said that he's not going to have a litmus test, as have other past presidents, and I take him at his word.
There are some who say, I want to see a conservative woman on the court. That would be Amy Coney Barrett in this case. Is that something for someone like you who watches the court and who compiles a list? Is that something that, if not in necessarily this instance, something that you would like to see happen at some point down the line?
Well, I don't tend to think in terms of genders and races. I look for qualities. That having been said, I had a woman on my list, Diane Sykes. There are a number of highly qualified women on the president's list: Allison Ide, Margaret Ryan, Amy Coney Barrett, Joan Larson. And if you picked any of them, that would be great.
All right, prediction time. Who do you think the president will pick?
Slight nod to Brett Kavanaugh, but
Why?
it could experience, dealt with a lot of, sits on the second most important court in the land, deals with a lot of issues that will be, that the administration will care about. But Amy Barrett and Raymond Keflage are right up behind.
Why is there this whisper campaign against Kavanaugh right now?
You know, I think that everybody in Washington has their favorites. It's a little bit like a cage match where only one person emerges. And so whisper campaigns happen to promote their candidate and to try to do in the others.
So you think it will be Kavanaugh? If you had the selection, who would you choose?
If I had the selection, it would be Kavanaugh, but the others would also be outstanding.
Thank you very much. John Malcolm, we appreciate it. You put the initial list together. It might come to fruition with the Kavanaugh pick. We'll see.
We'll see.
John Malcolm, thanks again this morning. Meantime, it is a big week ahead coming up for President Trump as he prepares for 2 summits in Europe with